I will say, like, it clicked in when I was like watching Chicken Run, because Philip, I remember watching this when we were in elementary school during like a snow day or something. Which Bridget, I don't know if you know what a snow day is, but you just don't get recess.
We've had ice storm days, but
Oh.
we had to go home because we didn't have salt trucks, so we
Oh
just
yeah,
died.
yeah,
Or
that happens down here. They
a
don't.
substitute teacher day. Oh, I suppose snow day, you mean like a day when you're not at school. So I think we
No.
watched this in school a few times too.
Yeah, I was thinking about like when it's too cold to do your recess, which is pretty rare. Like I feel like typically they would
Oh,
send us
yes.
out like come hell or high water. But like I was like watching it and I was like, man, like they really be killing these chickens. I was like, this is kind of like a lot. But I will say, like, right before we hopped on, and I'm gonna try to throw some of them in, but you guys probably saw them too. There are so many like fun facts with this movie being like the first claymation where it's like, I'm sure you guys read where it like took 100 hours to like make one chicken feather or something like that. So like this movie is amazing. So I'm
Yeah.
excited to talk about it. You can intro us, but
Yeah, I'm gonna intro us right away just to get people up to speed. So welcome to the Thodcast, conversations about animation. It's been a little while. The morbid winter depression is abating a bit, and it's been a very mild February up here so far. So hey, thanks for joining us on the Thodcast. And I'm your host, Philip Elke. Podcasting from Minnesota, as I mentioned. I'm joined by former Minnesotan Jody Pulaski in Georgia. Hey, how's it going?
it's going great. This is my first podcast since popping out a baby, so I'm super excited to be back. I've been kind of keeping up with the last couple episodes, and you guys have done some movies that are super exciting. But I'm excited to come back on this classic Chicken Run from 2000s with you and Bridget.
Well, yeah, and there's probably no such thing as a former Minnesotan either, so that's maybe not fair to label you such. But yes, returning to the podcast from the recent run of episodes, well, most recent. I've been negligent in recording. I haven't been feeling well, so, but yeah, Bridget, thank you so much for coming back to the show, and also in Georgia, got the little podcast enclave down there. Maybe I'll join you one day where the weather is just not inclined to dip below 40 degrees. I mean, anything under 70 for me is kind of iffy. How about
Oh, anything under 50, I'm like, that's cold. I don't know that. Like our mornings have been in the 30s, and then those, and I'm like, I don't love this.
You're
So
like,
my husband goes and warms up my car for me in the morning before I leave.
and you tell the kids, hey kids, school's canceled, stay home. No, I'm just kidding.
That would be nice, so I don't have to drive, but then that would be the rest of my day being absolute insanity. So for my sanity, they'll just have to go. My youngest isn't in school yet, but August, kindergarten. We're so close. We're so close. Jody's like, yes, I am starting.
So far away. But did you watch Chicken Run with your kids? Like, did you rewatch it with? I just watched it today with my dad, and prior to hopping on here, I had messaged you. Well, my dad has like a Holocaust and like concentration camps, but I'm guessing if you watched it with your kids, they weren't making similar comments.
No, when it started talking, so I actually watched it when she wasn't here. But Oliver was not interested. I
Oh,
think that he's very like he doesn't love movies very much. I have to like strap him down with like cords and cables and things to get him to want to watch something. He's just stubborn. He's like, no, I want to watch Dewdrops or PJ Masks on Netflix. And I'm like, you're watching Toy Story and you're gonna love it. I did that one day. He did not want to do it, but it's fine. But he would like every now and then he'd come in and he'd just watch, like when they were doing the chicken training, like the taekwondo, and he was like, he just watched for a couple minutes and then he'd leave. He did miss the butchering of the chickens, though. I'm telling you, I also forgot about that, and I watched it. I actually watched it again today while I was working, just for fun. And I was like, man, they really like first couple minutes in, they're like, all right, someone's got to die, and I was like, I don't remember this part, but I mean, it did come out in 2000, so I was like 9.
Is he
So that's
like
probably why.
he's not a rare unicorn who isn't just mesmerized by screens by chance, is he? 'Cause if
Um,
that's the case, then you really lucked out.
he has a very specific thing. He like goes in spurts where he watches certain things, but my he's discovered YouTube Kids and he loves to watch people play Minecraft.
Yeah.
That's his current thing, but some of them are so annoying. And I'm like, every now and then I'll like put it back on the TV. I'm like, yeah, you know, for my sanity, if I need a break from him being up my butt, I'll be like, oh yeah, you know what? You can watch a Minecraft video. But then he always takes it for granted and he's like sneaking back, like watching cat videos and things. And I'm like, that's fine, but all this stuff that you watch is really annoying. So the like mind of a 4-year-old is weird.
And I mean, Chicken Run is like stop motion claymation. So it's really not everybody's cup of tea. I will say, I don't typically like this style. For some reason, with Chicken Run and all the details that are in it and the storyline, I feel like I love that. But I've watched a couple other ones directed by this pair, and I don't know, like he might just not like claymation because it's not my favorite thing. I will give it a pass for this movie, but we've watched a couple other ones with the stop motion and not it's not everyone.
Have you watched like Wallace and Gromit?
I've seen bits of it, and I'm not sure if it's the same animation, but Dog Island, isn't that kind of like this style?
Well, I think Nick
Oh,
Park,
yeah,
who did Nick Park
Wes
did
Anderson.
Wallace and Gromit. But I don't know that he's done any of those other ones. But I know he did Chicken Run and he did Wallace and Gromit because that's what they started with. It was Wallace and Gromit shorts.
Oh, that's right. And then this one was like a feature length debut for them coming in.
Yeah, him and Peter Lord.
This was Peter Lord, Nick Park are kind of the names that you kind of associate with Aardman Animation and their Wallace and Gromit short films, which got their start on kind of the film landscape, and then due to the significant amount of acclaim from doing those, started getting rubbing shoulders with some Hollywood bigwigs like Jeffrey Katzenberg and Steven Spielberg of DreamWorks. This is one of the movies that kind of started the whole legacy of DreamWorks animation. I didn't pull up like the list of DreamWorks animated films, but I'm not sure if this is considered part of that same like DreamWorks animated canon in the way that,
Shrek.
Well,
yeah,
no, that, but like how, what was the most recent? Wish was like what the 63rd Disney animated feature or whatever, 62nd. But what was it? What I know I mentioned it during the episode. What number Wish was in the Disney animated canon?
Why did I think it was the 100th? Wasn't this big celebratory 100th?
Well, it's 100 years.
Oh, the 100-year celebration. Okay, so I'm not sure.
Featured. It's like it's in the 60s. It's gotta be 62nd. Yes, that's what it was.
Well, so DreamWorks Animation's website has Chicken Run as one of its movies, so I would say it is.
Was it the first? No, Ants was the first. And then
oh yeah, it wasn't the first.
Prince of Egypt, and then Road to El Dorado, and then Chicken Run. Yeah.
I mean, they're definitely going to want to claim this one because it was such a huge success when it came in. I think it said that it grossed over like $200 million at some point. I don't know if how they count that, if it's up till now or whatever, but I mean, when it came out, people really loved it. I sent you guys that little fun fact, but people thought that it might have won like the best movie of the year, which it didn't. I think there was a
It was
different one.
Gladiator.
You're
Gladiator
talking
did.
about Academy Awards.
Yeah, but the
Yeah, that
following
was
year they introduced Best Animated Film, which I think was won by Shrek or something like that.
That's
Mhm.
right. Yep, the
It was Shrek.
inaugural Best Animated Feature was Shrek in the 2002 ceremony for the films of 2001. Chicken Run was released in 2000,
2000.
and there was a campaign to nominate it for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. It was not nominated, but the lack of a nomination helped um, precipitate the introduction of the Best Animated Feature category the following year. So it did make a significant mark overall in at least the awards circuit.
And
I
Philip,
think,
you mentioned that it was sort of like loosely based, or like maybe even like a parody of The Great Escape, which was like that World War II movie. And I don't know if was that a huge movie at the time.
yeah,
I've never seen it.
it'd be strange to refer to this as a parody just because it's got so much artistic merit.
Sure, sure, sure. Okay,
So
we'll
no,
call it
but
like a loosely based
it's true
on.
though.
A retelling by Chicken.
I mean, it's
Yes.
kind of a parody in the way that like the Monty Python films or, the Holy Grail, like that's a parody of Camelot, Spamalot, on Broadway. But still like, yeah, it's and it's this, relies on absurdist humor. I recently watched the movie Brazil for the first time, which is, very artistic, it's the kind of thing that we could easily cover on this show. Just a lot of impressive visual artistry in Brazil. Are you familiar with that? That was like a Terry Gilliam, Monty Python adjacent movie back in the 80s.
No, I
I
hadn't
don't
seen that
think
one.
so.
Yeah. But very absurd. It's like 1984, but a comedy. And
Oh, okay. The pictures.
yeah,
I Googled
yeah.
it, and the pictures are interesting. I do not think I've seen this ever. It's like a
Yeah.
big giant baby head. I don't think I've seen that.
Brazil, well, if the face might be, oh yeah, there's the baby mask. Yeah, like it's like a no
Yeah, it was like a
mask, kind of like
yeah, and they're like stretching this
whisper away.
lady's face.
Not
Yeah.
not whisper away, whisper of the
Whisker
heart.
away.
Yeah, whisker away. A whisker of the heart. That'll be the Ghibli parody eventually. Let's see. I Somebody said that this was an Oscar nominated film, The Chicken Run, on some site that I read. It might have been IMDb trivia, which is never that reliable. Not a whole lot of entries in the IMDb trivia for Chicken Run, weirdly. And
It
thankfully,
was denied being nominated for an Oscar, apparently, but people
yeah.
wanted it to be, and that's why they created that
I
genre.
mean, it could have been nominated for any number of other things, though, but I guess it wasn't. I mean, I would guess, it could have gotten like a special achievement, but apparently did not. Okay, I'm nominated for 2 BAFTA and a bunch of other stuff. So no Oscar nominations at all. I would think a score, because like this has one of the greatest. I mean, I mentioned, this being kind of technically a parody, but like maybe just because the score is so sort of derivative of like the Elmer Bernstein classic Hollywood scores to films like The Great Escape, which this is mostly paying homage to. And yeah, that extremely famous film from I believe the 50s, Steve McQueen. Uh, so, and Stalag 17, another one, Bridge on the River Kwai. So yeah, it's, there's so much reference to a classic Hollywood, so much that this film is indebted to overall, but the fact that it was just such a monumental effort to embark on this level of claymation filmmaking at the time, a full feature film. I can't imagine this must have taken several years. Although
Yeah,
yeah,
it looked like they were developing the story back in 1996.
yeah, that makes
But the
sense.
production that it took to pull it all together, again, you guys probably saw some of the facts, but it was like 563 puppets and 900 pairs of eyeballs, and each character's eye was a different color. And just detail wise, this was a labor of love. The production was like 400 people that were together, and all these model makers and animators and artists. It's so impressive how much they poured into this movie. And I mean, it takes some guts to kind of go out on a limb. I don't know if this was the first full length stop animation movie that came out.
Um, Claymation, I
Claymation.
think, with like the plasticine hand sculpting that they do. But Nightmare Before Christmas is
Oh,
sort
sure.
of given the distinction of the first feature length stop motion film. There's debate as to whether certain earlier films qualify for that, you know,
Like
honor.
category.
Yeah, like I don't know. There's a couple things that there may be more like 2D puppet animation. So but yeah, like to try to do something akin to like the Rankin Bass Christmas specials feature length. That was what Nightmare Before Christmas set out to do, and was sort of the first to really find success with that medium. You would see sort of James and the Giant Peach, Chicken Run. There haven't been that many. Just it's such an intense process, frankly.
Yeah, on
We
this,
only just got the sequel. Yeah.
yeah, it only took 24 years. Well, so what I over here is that apparently they, because it was plasticine and it's not very strong, they make 3 to 4 chickens in a week to make a second of the film, just 1 second of the film. The puppet had to be moved and photographed 20 times for 1 second of the movie. And that was what, out an
Yeah.
hour and 20 minutes? Was it longer than that?
I
I think it
think
was an hour and 25.
124 is what
Yeah.
what IMDb says, but that includes credits, so a little less. But I mean, they accomplish a lot in that hour 24-minute runtime. You know, it
It really
doesn't.
is a great storyline, great plot. I mean, I couldn't remember all the little details because I hadn't seen it since elementary school. I remembered liking it, but they really do, have character development. They do have like a plot that moves along and doesn't seem boring and seems full. And the villains, well, like, what are they called? The Tweedles? The
Yeah.
Tweedies.
Tweedles
Or
are
the Tweedleys. The
Tweety.
Tweedleys, I think.
yeah,
Tweety,
Tweety?
like a Tweety bird, Tweety.
like they made most of every minute.
No, yeah.
The only the only big critique I had from the jump is that the chickens have teeth. I think it looks very odd. But I just went with it for the sake of the movie. But I do like the story, regardless of how, kind of sad and morbid it is when you think about prisoners of war or comparing it to something like that. It gets kind of sad if you let your brain go in that direction. But it's a pretty fun adventure story. And I mean, there's a lot of comedic relief throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, well, that's oh, sorry. Well,
Um,
so
the
Jim
I mentioned the
Carrey,
plasticine because I
Yeah,
kind
go
of moved
back.
from the plasticine to the
yeah.
runtime. But wanted to mention that like the models themselves do have a bit of an advantage where it's just the limbs and the above the neck, that are the sculptable plasticine, whereas the bodies are a more robust what was it? Latex. They've got like a latex protective coating over it. and silicone. So yeah, it's not quite as, treacherous as trying to mold like a Play-Doh uh puppet for every single frame. There were certain components of these puppets that had much greater structural integrity than the traditional claymation material. But sorry, Bridget. Yeah, you continue with what you were going to say.
Okay, you're good. No, they were just solid girlies. That's what they were. But I was gonna add
They
that yeah, they were thick. They were thick. But apparently, so I know we were talking about how it like seemed kind of inspired by the Holocaust. But apparently Ginger and Rocky, those two chickens, were based on chickens that Nick Park had as a kid. He had pet chickens, and apparently those two were based on those chickens he had, which I thought was funny. You're like, yeah, what would happen if my chickens could talk? You know what? I think that about my cats all the time. I'm like, what would they say? They'd probably just be like, food, food. Okay, leave me alone. Food.
Yeah, and like I'm guessing they took meetings with certain Hollywood executives while they were on the awards circuit for the Wallace and Gromit short films. I haven't looked it up, but I'm guessing those made it, at least, one of them, if not all three, made it to the Oscars. So like they would have been rubbing shoulders with the bigwigs. But like Spielberg, I think, had a chicken farm himself, so it was kind of easy to pitch him on the idea. And he does cite Great Escape as being his favorite film in some places, I believe. So if that's still currently Steven Spielberg's favorite film, then pretty impressive and a sign that I should probably check it out. From 1963, I guess, is when The Great Escape came out. I have never seen it.
I can't recall if I have.
Yeah.
It feels like something that I might have watched, but I'm like, maybe I didn't. Maybe I might have seen. It's one of those movies I think I've seen clips of, but I've never actually seen the whole movie.
Sure. Uh, Prisoner of War camp as opposed to a concentration camp. Well, I guess prisoners are being concentrated in this camp, so to speak. So, but
My dad caught that right away as soon as he sat down to watch this with me. And I thought he was just being like 70-year-old Vietnam vet crazy kind of. And then as every minute passed, I was like, wait a minute, my dad is onto something here.
well, you're right. There's the pie machine, which perhaps a more apt metaphor due to the fact that it's they're literally put into an oven at one point
Mhm.
in the film. So, ooh, yeah.
It's a lot. I mean, that Pyomatic scene, that was one of the scenes, I guess, that was like the big showstopper for the
Yeah.
production. And I read that and I kind of copied and pasted it so I wouldn't forget. It was like 150 separate shots, 6,432 frames, and like the scene lasts 4 minutes, but it took like 18 months to design and storyboard and film. So that 4 minutes, that Pyomatic, that was a huge scene. So
Yeah. Uh, it is quite the sort of Looney Tunes sequence, and obviously any attempt at verisimilitude to how a real um you know automated pie making or food processing machine would work isn't all that relevant in like a animated movie for kids or whatever. It's there's only so much you can do to have this machine function like well, and obviously who knows how these things work in real life. You watch something like How It's Made, and I guess you get a general sense of like all the moving parts. But the fact that they were able to make it as convincing as it is and as thrilling, it's I
mhm.
mean they're referencing things. There are a lot of like explicit references too, which is kind of fun. Um, you know, uh, parody the originality on display here is, second to none, but also like any great filmmaker, you want to kind of pay honor to those who came before. And like in Pixar films, these highly lauded original stories, there's plenty of references to, old Hollywood and more and other famous materials. So like with the Pie-O-Matic, it's like Indiana Jones, he's going through a dungeon or a crypt, and you've got like literally the moment where her hat gets knocked off by the door. She reaches back to grab it. That's been a moment quoted in numerous films. So,
Where does that moment originate from? Is that an Indiana Jones?
I mean, probably the
'Cause I've
most
seen it done
famous.
and redone in other things, but I'm trying to think where its genesis lies.
Well, if I had to guess, I imagine like based just what I know about like even older movies is that they usually had a lot of things like that. There was like, oh no, the damsel's gonna get hurt, and then the guy like swoops in really quick and like saves her before she gets impaled by something. So I imagine it's probably happened in like some shape or form for like centuries at
Way
this
back
point.
in the beginning of time when
Yeah.
Shakespeare was like putting his like little plays up on stage, it probably started.
Back when they were all men, there was no ladies on this on the stage. You had to be saved. You were a damsel as a man.
I will say, to jump back, like where you're saying like how it's made. I don't know if you guys have ever gone to like a manufacturing plant, but I know as a kid, my parents took us to like a place where they printed money. I don't know if that, but like you could kind of like
No.
watch how things go through from like step one, step two, step three. And I mean, those machines and those factories, they are pretty intense. So they probably got a lot of inspiration from real, hopefully not real chicken farms, because every now and then I'll get a PETA video on my Facebook that it's like, you want to see where chicken nuggets really come from? I'm like, no,
I don't.
where they come from. But
I know, and I want to be blissfully aware.
Exactly. Like, please do not show me that.
So I've been to the Starbucks plant that's like out in like South Augusta somewhere, like out there, and it was pretty cool. Like
cups.
Well, so they make they don't have the cup. It's like where they actually like sort coffee into things. So like the little like packs you can buy that's like you can just pour it into like water and it makes coffee. Mm-hmm. They have those there, and so I got to like watch it like get put into the package and then it's sealed. And then but it does it so fast. I was like, man, they really, like, it goes through and then everything gets sorted into the boxes and then they ship it out. But I think they do bags of coffee as well. I went when I was in college as part of my internship and I was like, this is cool.
Well, the TDs would probably love that because once they decide in the movie to switch from egg production to chicken pot pie production, it's pretty shocking that Mrs. Tweedy is like, bring out all the chickens, because like she wants it all done at once when she realizes that it's gonna the second time once they fix the machine, she's like, bring all of them. And
she's like, I want to be rich now.
She wants to be rich so bad. And I love some of the jokes they really did get me, where she's like, I'm sick of bringing in minuscule profits, and then on top of like a magazine there's an ad, tired of minuscule profits, like get rich. And they use like the exact same verbiage that she had kind of been complaining about. And I usually don't like the little like side characters, but the mice or the rats, they were really funny in this movie too.
Great.
Good comedy throughout.
Great casting.
That was my favorite part. Yeah, my favorite part about when like they're talking to Rocky and they're like, oh yeah, so how many eggs do you think he's gonna be? And he's like, oh yeah, it's gonna be a lot. I'll let you know when I pop out those eggs.
Yeah,
and Ginger's just like, what?
Or something like that.
Yeah,
he wasn't really lying. He was sort of like skirting the truth. And it was the same with saying, he kind of lets all the chickens know that if they hide him, he'll teach them to fly. But really what he says is, I'll teach you everything I know. So he's not really lying there too. He's a real scammer. I mean, he sidesteps that truth with Ginger and the rest of the flock.
Well, she's like, so you're lying about having eggs. She was already a little suspicious. Now she's like, okay, now.
Yeah. I mean, he's not very bright, and yeah, at least Nick, he's the smart rat. Like he knows that roosters can't lay eggs, and he thinks he's eventually going to get one up on Rocky because, Rocky thinks he's dumb enough to fool the rats into thinking that he can lay eggs himself. But and then eventually the rats they get their eggs, I guess, but then have to end up using them as ammunition at a later point. So I don't know. Yeah,
Somehow these animals get their hands on all sorts of things, whether it's a teapot or knitting needles and all these things. And I remember there was a movie that came out probably around a similar time called The Borrowers. And it was about these little people who live in the walls or like, I don't know if anyone's seen it, but I always loved that when they would take something like a thimble, but they're using it as like a water bucket or something like that. I think those are lots of fun. There's a scene where all the chickens are sort of celebrating and having this big dance party. And they put up those Christmas lights and they really make it a club, I guess. And I always liked that. And I always liked, seeing things be repurposed that way. I don't know if you guys ever made like fairy gardens or anything like that growing up, but I always thought that was really whimsical.
Well, that's what I liked about the rats when he was like, "Oh yes," he was like, "This is a hat from France. Voila, that's French." And I was like, "Ah, yes, a badminton birdie."
Yeah, and he's like, not only is it a hat for like the casual day out, but it's also, and he like flips it for brides.
Yeah,
oh
for
gosh.
weddings.
Yeah.
Or and then
Yeah,
like he was like, "Oh yes, a necklace, a fancy necklace," and it's like the tub stoppers with the
oh
chain.
Yeah,
geez.
And I was like, because I like when I watched it the first time the other day, I was watching it, but there were some things I missed. So when I watched it again today, I was like, that's not jewelry. But
Yeah.
you know what? A chicken wouldn't know any better. So
exactly.
Yeah,
They have
so
bird brains. I was kind of laughing as I watched. I was like, oh, these chickens, bird brains. But as a new mom, I feel like you could also start calling it like mom brain, and maybe Bridget can like understand too. But I was like, I understand what it's like to be functioning on like a slightly less intelligent level. So like, give these
I
birds some credit because they go above and beyond when it comes to trying to figure out a way to get out of here. I'm surprised it took them so long to think about going over the fence because I know they talk about some of their plans like we're gonna dig under, we're gonna go through, we're gonna this and that. It's like you'd think. I mean, I don't know how long they've been scheming and scamming to get out of this place, but Ginger makes it sound like pretty much her whole life she's been trying to escape.
it's it's quite the running gag at the beginning. Yeah, the numerous attempts, I didn't count them all, but days spent in solitary confinement. I wonder how um I guess how fertile Ginger herself could possibly be, given all her days spent in the coal bunker, and like she is a lot thinner than the other. She's not as thin as Mac, but as far as the average chicken goes,
well,
you know.
she might be one of those spry chickens because I looked it up out of curiosity because
Okay.
you were like, oh yeah, she's like been trying her whole life to get out of here. So for chickens to reach full maturity, it only takes 20 weeks. So she could very well have been trying to escape her whole life if she is an adult chicken.
And I
It's
mean,
not even a year.
we had a hobby farm growing up and we had chickens. And I mean, don't necessarily quote me on this, but I do think chickens have a fairly long lifespan if you take good care of them. Like I know for a fact some of our chickens were 5, 6 years old. So I mean, this might have been a lot of days for some of them. You'd have to look it up how long they can live, but I wouldn't be surprised if like a well cared for chicken could live for like maybe 10 years. That might be a bit long, but they have
Yeah.
very nice quarters. I mean, inside these quote unquote like chicken camp or their chicken coops, they have like
Chicken
bunk
camp.
beds, they have wood floors, they're not sleeping in dust. I mean, I,
Oh,
they're having actually a pretty nice life for just laying eggs compared to like when you see factory farms these days. But I can understand, of course, wanting to get out.
these chickens, like compared to what your typical chicken's life is like in 2024, uh, they have it, it, yeah, perfectly plush, is one way to describe it. They're living large as in terms of like, what um most factory farm chickens, yeah. Like but that's I guess this film seems to be set in like an earlier era, post-war Great Britain, where they didn't have factory farming probably to the extent that we do now, where there's barely more cubic footage in the warehouses where they grow these and keep these chickens than there are chickens themselves. So it's it is kind of a humorous dynamic when you compare it to um, reality, but this movie does incorporate enough of reality to and grounding to make it appealing to all ages. I feel like teenagers I think still enjoy this film because it deals with the reality that we eat chickens,
Mm.
and so um death is a constant looming threat over every single one of these characters who we get to know and love. And like the Tweety farmers, they're these arch villains from the perspective of the chickens, but really they're just kind of like
They're just a normal farmer.
normal, yeah.
But there is like a scene where I think it's Mr. Tweety. They do kind of grab these chickens from the throat and kind of pull them up like that, and then it switches to like a dinner table, and you see the rib cage of a eaten up chicken. So they don't shy away from this reality for a kids movie at all. So I think you're right, Philip. I think that keeps it kind of
It
not
would it would suck. It would be boring if
right.
yeah.
There's real threat there. There's a real terror out there. These big boots that come stomping and the two guard dogs that come barking. There's a real risk out there for the flock.
Yeah, it's not Disney Junior Barnyard Pals or you know some eh, early childhood programming. And even still, like I would have no issues showing a fairly young kid this movie. I don't think there's anything really overly scary for
It's
No, and
kids.
like,
right?
Yeah.
yeah, it's rated G.
It
And I
is
mean, it's not
G.
graphic. Like, you
Yeah.
don't see anything die. It's just implied. So, like, I probably, when I watched it the first time, probably did not register that the chicken was dying. That probably did not click when I watched it
Oh, I
as a
mean,
9-year-old.
the only thing that would have prevented me from knowing that these chickens were getting killed is not making the connection that the food that I was eating on a regular basis was derived from these same animals. Because when you're a kid, you're constantly eating chicken. That's like one of the few things young
That's all my
kids.
kids eat, man. I say, oh,
Yeah.
that and hot dogs. They probably don't even know that hot
So,
dogs is just a
so
bunch of mixed up pig parts. So, like, they
yeah.
probably have no clue.
Well, I
There
don't
should
know.
be a
I
movie
feel like
about that next. Oh, there is Charlotte's Web, the little pig, right?
Do
chicken.
they, or are they going to eat the pig though in Charlotte's Web?
There's always the threat, but chicken is
There's
one of
also
those
bait.
things where it's one of the few meats where you call it the name of the actual animal.
That
Whereas
is
with
true.
yeah,
You don't say like ground cow. You say ground beef.
so it's like there's no illusion as a kid as to what you're eating. Oh, it's chicken. Oh, like the bird. So someone literally had to kill a bird so that I could have my McNuggies.
I wonder
Uh,
if that clicks because for the longest time I lied to my kids about fish sticks. I told them they were chicken sticks so that they'd eat them because I don't know what it is. Kids hate fish. If you're like, this is a fish, and they're like, absolutely not. But they're like, oh, chicken sticks. They know they're fish sticks now, but for a long time
I
I
wonder
just
if
lied.
it's because when you're like something smells fishy or like, ooh, it's a fishy smell, like it's kind of seems yucky. It's rare that you like. I mean, chicken farms probably smell very bad too, but maybe
But
like
if you see a chickie, you're like, oh, chicken.
hmm.
Like I see
Yeah,
a fish, I'm like, oh, fish.
I mean, fish goes bad much more quickly, and yeah, it's kind of easier
The weird
to
smell.
yeah to mess fish up. So it is a dicier kind of food to prepare, but I don't know. fishing is a big part of life up where I live, land of 10,000 lakes. So like
Mhm.
I loved, having a fish fry after going out and catching some fish. So that was never an issue for me. Uh, but
And my
I don't
kids are
know.
so picky. They love chicken though. I'm like, oh yeah, you guys need to watch this movie. This is what you're eating, chickens. But I mean,
Yeah.
and that's what I said. It probably didn't click. Like I also was a picky kid, so I probably only ate chicken for a long time. But yeah, it just didn't click that I'm like, oh, these chickens are getting murdered.
Yeah. So I mean, and to me, like nowadays, you I don't know, point a finger in a not even the middle finger, just like how it's rude to point uh it's like you do that in a movie nowadays and you go from a G to a PG. That's how sensitive the MPA is. But like that, I don't know, maybe they were more lenient back in 2000 when they certified this film. But I just think that the fact that it is chickens and it's like nobody is under any illusions about the fact that we kill, millions of chickens a day, and that a lot of people going to see this movie are coming off of, having recently consumed these animals like that, there's nothing all that perilous about the idea of chickens dying thematically. But the movie is just so effective in telling its story that you do feel the genuine peril, and the characters are so well developed and fleshed out. They could be uh they could be snakes, they could be spiders, they could be any kind of anthropomorphized creature that we don't necessarily have a lot of respect for. And yeah, that they are given this level of humanity that makes us really care about them. But you don't need to go out and rate your film, you know, PG if that's gonna scare away some parents because they think the material is just a bit too adult. But I don't know. I mean, the fact that this movie does appeal to such a wide audience probably means that maybe there are thematic notions here that you just maybe wouldn't um, include in a G-rated film in 2024. But to me, it's like, yeah, there's not even like cursing, so
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
it's
Well, and
about as
I
safe as
think
can be. Yeah.
yeah, and I do think it's changed, I guess, like how they rate things. Because like we watched Atlantis recently, and I think it was rated G. And like people died. Lots of people die in that movie. And like Oliver was like scared when they're like in this underwater thing and fighting this underwater monster thing. And Oliver was like freaked out by it. And I was like, this was G when this came out. Is
It
like
is
pretty
PG.
crazy. Or is it PG?
Yeah, but
But still,
Treasure,
I was like, this would not be PG now.
I think Treasure Planet might be G. I think that might be
Maybe.
the confusion.
Because we watched both of
But
those like
yeah.
recently. But yeah, but I was like, so I think really what it is just like things I guess weren't rated as like heavily as they are now. Because I feel like most kid movies nowadays, at least ones that are like targeted at children, there's not really ever any like stakes or
Yeah. I mean,
Maybe
any kind
writers are just getting lazier. Just kidding. No, I agree with you.
well,
yeah,
the
like
only
there's just
reason
never
why.
any stakes in like the movies for kids.
Yeah, I don't care about rating. Sometimes there is a weird sort of incestuous overlap between, the sort of studios lobbying for certain kinds of ratings and, the fact that they will have to censor things to get a certain rating and or they just kind of pump out trash, like Illumination sometimes. No,
Hmm.
I still haven't seen Migration. I don't know. Yeah, have either of you seen Migration? I
No.
mean, it's hung
I've
around for so
seen
long.
like so many ads for it because they're using a Taylor Swift song for the promotion. And
Which one?
Migration, it's like these ducks. Oh, what is it?
Oh no, I meant the song. I
It's
want to say that Migration's out on one of the streaming apps already.
it's
But I can't remember which
definitely
one.
out there, and I know it doesn't matter, but now I'm gonna look it up. Migration, Taylor Swift song. I'm gonna tell you right now. Woods. Are we out of the woods?
Oh yeah,
Which is not one of her most popular ones, but I'm like,
like that one.
like what did they pay Taylor Swift for this
A pretty
migration? Like
penny.
the migration movie probably spent their whole budget on this Taylor Swift song, and then the remainder of the money like went to the animators. It's just, I don't think it looks good at all. But if Philip wants us to watch it, we'll watch
We will watch this
Um,
movie.
I mean, it's probably okay because it seems to have developed a decent reputation. And I don't know, they're like all those meme movies, like they're PG and got a lot of kind of rude jokes in them and stuff that appeal to adults. So it's like, that's fine. It's like they're probably pushing to get a PG rating to ensure that they kind of attract more of an adult audience to those. I mean, and I know there are plenty of adult fans, I think, for the Minions Despicable Me franchise. It's based on
I liked the Despicable Me movies in the beginning. I don't love the Minions very much. And we ate at the Minions restaurant at Universal. It was gross. So it was very cute. The presentation in the restaurant, super cute. But the food was not. So if you guys Universal, don't waste your money at that restaurant. It was very cute. Go in, look at it, go, oh, very cute, and then walk out and eat somewhere else.
Very cute, but I will be stopping at Taco Bell.
Well, they had like a little like Despicable Me ramen thing, and I was like, oh, that sounds cute. I'll try that. No, it was not good. I was like, man, you didn't season this at all. It was gross. But the presentation very cute. It like came in a little glass and it had the Minion's face on it, and they like pulled it up and they poured the soup over it. Again, cute, gross. So apparently Migration is out to like rent for like $20 on Amazon and stuff like that. But they said once it's like released for free, it'll be on Peacock because it's
Yeah.
Universal.
So many birds, peacock, chicken, pigeons, or whatever they are, ducks, whatever's migrated.
I think they're ducks. Do you guys remember? You guys remember Vine, right? We are all that age.
Yeah.
Do you guys
kinda.
remember? Look at all those chickens. That's all I could think about the whole time I was
Oh.
watching that movie. Yeah, it was a Vine, and it was a little girl, and it's like a yard full of geese. And she goes, look at all those chickens. And that is something that has lived in my mind since I saw it, like, 15 years ago or however long it was. But every time I see birds now, I'm like, look at all those chickens.
I will say geese, we had geese growing up as well. Geese are very vicious. They will chase you. They will bite at you. They'll nip at you. So there's a part during Chicken Run where Ginger's like, attack! Because I think Mr. Tweety has caught them creating this airplane for their escape. And I looked at my dad and I said, birds, they're actually pretty fierce. I mean, if you think of like turkeys and peacocks and like the bigger birds, they wouldn't be afraid to attack you, and they probably would. Ostriches, I mean, those are
Have you seen the videos of like the emus? Like people who have emus?
But I know that birds have a vicious nature, a very protective nature. And if a flock of chickens came running at me, I'd be jumping in the hot gravy as well and swimming away because I wouldn't want to bug them. And I mean,
Velociraptors and Jurassic
Yep.
Park, they're basically birds.
They're just really big, steely birds.
Yeah.
Well, that's like my brother and sister-in-law, they have chickens, but their chickens are very cute. They don't really want to be held, but they're cute. But they have 2 ducks. And apparently if you have a male duck, you need to have multiple female ducks, but they don't. They have 1 female duck and a male duck and then a bunch of chickens. And their names are Cheese and Quackers. It's very cute.
that's
But
right.
the male duck is a psychopath because apparently, like I watched this duck, she was like feeding them and he would lower himself to the ground, and as she was walking away, he would chase after her, and she'd turn around and she'd be like, "Stop it!" And he'd like do his like wings all big up in the air, like he was like trying to like fight her.
Yeah, they puff themselves up.
Yeah.
It's a natural thing.
Yeah, it was so funny to watch.
I wouldn't want to be out on this little chicken farm. And I wonder if there's a reason why, and I guess I don't know if this is true to farms, but there is like one rooster who lives in there, that the cock of the walk guy who's like from the
the like sergeant.
And I wonder if that's true, that they always keep, a couple of roosters around with a flock. But this rooster is very, very old, and like for some reason they thought he'd know how to fly the plane. I must have missed how they thought that, because he did military stuff. But like Rocky's the new rooster, but there's that older rooster there as well. What's his name? Do you guys remember?
Fowler, T.I. Fowler.
Yeah. Well, I think they do that because they're territorial. Like in real life, why they have only like so many roosters is because they're territorial. They're like, I want all these chickens. Please go away.
Oh yeah, they do like, I don't know if they use roosters, but chicken fighting. I don't know. Isn't that like cockfighting a thing?
Cockfight, yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I hope it's not a common thing anymore, but I know I've definitely heard of it. So maybe when you do put a couple of roosters in the same flock, although they made these two roosters sleep together in a bed because they didn't have enough space. Well, they did. All the female chickens were like, "You can share my bed. You can share my bed." And like, he ends up with the old.
Rocky literally says cockfighting's illegal where I come from. So
oh yeah, you're right.
You get references.
Well, well, I think it's the same thing with like dog fighting. I think with like the fighting that is illegal is that they usually like starve them and stuff, and then so when they put them together, that's why they fight. But I think you can have multiple roosters like within like a chicken flock, I guess, as long as you have enough for them not to fight over them. Because they're just territorial men animals.
I mean, as far as the demographics of the farm are concerned, it seems kind of incongruous that they would have had this whole stock of chickens for months at a time, gradually cycling them out. That one at the beginning, Edwina, who gets eaten, is supposedly due to the fact that I guess she's one of the crew who's constantly trying to escape at the beginning of the film. Because they refer to the fact I didn't like scrutinize whether her character model was consistently in those scenes. But I'm guessing that they used her in those opening sequences if they later, blame the fact that she was too busy trying to escape to lay eggs, or the stress of the escape was impacting her productivity. But I don't know, like with the pie machine, it seems like, well, they'd be going through, Mrs. Tweedy says, all of them. So I guess they're just going to do a batch of pies and exhaust their entire chicken coop. And I guess have to consistently now ship full-grown chickens into their farm. I suppose if they're not harvesting eggs really now, they can probably hatch their own and then up their feed and just, like they mature within 20 weeks or so, like you said. So I mean, that logistically, they're going to have to, come up with definitely a much different solution to what they're currently adopting for their egg business. So
it's like a get rich quick scheme. She's like, oh yeah, if we have all this money because we're not making it from the eggs, then we can just buy more chickens. And then it'll just keep feeding that we have more money, we buy more chickens.
Maybe they can sell vegetarian pies too, because like they come out with a bunch of non-chicken pies in that first test batch. I guess you would maybe want to test it, and if you waste a few vegetables and ingredients in the process, and that's
the pies look really good.
They do.
I'm not even a chicken pot pie person, but when the gravy explodes everywhere, I'm like, oh, that looks so good. I'm hungry for mashed potatoes and gravy. Like, let's go
Well,
to KFC.
dude, so you guys would love England apparently, because so my mother-in-law, I love her to death. She's a very British woman, but apparently the only thing she knows how to make is like meat pie and shepherd's pie. And that's it. She only knows how to make pies. She's very, very English. Pies
Are they
only.
good?
I don't know. I don't like shepherd's pie.
Oh no. Okay, if you see
Well,
her,
usually I'll
whenever.
cook. I'll usually
Okay.
cook because I cook more than she does. And so like, cause she'll get jealous, like she's jealous of my mom sometimes because my mom cooks a lot. And she's like, yeah, I don't know. I just was never a big baker. It just wasn't my thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, but
I
she
mean,
makes the mean pie. They love pies over there.
as much as this film relies on cartoon gaggery and absurdity, like I totally buy the idea that you might up your income by building one of these machines and switching over to that kind of business model, just because that's kind of what was happening in that era, late 40s, early 50s. Mechanization was becoming just such a phenomenon. Factory farms, starting to be built more and more. And like the wartime mechanization to build, the war machines used to fight the Axis powers, like that same level of production would then be translated into just ordinary items that people consume nowadays. And I mean, general consumer culture and the economies of the Western countries just exploded in that era. So yeah, like the fact that machines like these were being invented now meant that it was more affordable to to do something on this scale, which I imagine small mom and pop farmers like the Tweedies did have certain opportunities to really grow their business back in the day. I wouldn't be surprised.
Mhm.
Well, and if you think about it, especially in that era, but like once the war was over, a lot of women were like, oh, you know what? I don't want to go back to sitting at home. I also went to work. And then, people started having frozen dinners and all those kind of things. They could have made their way right into a frozen dinner like company with their
Yeah.
pies.
No,
And if they had more money, they could buy different animals to put in the pies.
Ugh.
It could have been a whole business. It could have been a meat pie, ground beef pie.
apparently that really escalates in the sequel too. We're not going to talk about the sequel today, really, but uh, stay tuned. Hopefully
Yeah.
soon. But
I haven't mentioned it because no spoilers.
yeah,
So have you both seen it?
I watched it
I've seen
yesterday.
part of it. Yeah.
Okay. That's
So
all I wanted to know.
yeah, like the escape and they build a plane. I mean, okay, chickens building, but yeah, the fact that it's this wonderful piece of art, this feature length stop motion claymation film in the Aardman style, and of course the chicken have teeth because Wallace and Gromit, that's just how, our beloved Wallace from the Wallace and Gromit films, he's got that certain look, the wide just
Wide-eyed, big
elliptical,
mouth.
the elliptical smile, the mouth. It's sort of like a constipation face almost.
Well, apparently he was based on his dad, on Nick Park's dad. He was like,
Really?
I'm pulling everything. Yeah, apparently Wallace from Wallace and Gromit was based on Nick Park's dad. And then the chickens were based on his chickens.
Those little, glass beaded eyes, like just they wanted to capture a similar magic, and I mean they totally nailed it with this. I mean, I don't know, um, I guess just like there was a lot of passion at the studio at the time, just trying to complete an endeavor on this scale. And I think they were pretty exhausted, frankly, after this was completed, which is why it kind of took them a while to get back up on their feet. And, people were clamoring for more Chicken Run or another Aardman, another quick. But I mean, this movie
It's not
took,
something you can just like
yeah,
whip out a project
no.
like this.
Principal photography began in January of 1998, and they probably did a lot of hiring, 30 sets with 80 animators, 180 people working in overalls. It says here on the Wikipedia page. You know, basically 1 minute of film completed for each week.
Wow.
But they probably had multiple units, I'm guessing, simultaneously, which, you know, is why they were able to get it out within 2 years from the beginning of principal photography. Okay, production wrapped June 18th, 1999. So almost a year and a half they were filming. So very, I mean, that's a long time for any movie. So um,
Okay, I looked it up because I was like, wasn't Flushed Away Aardman Animations? It was, but it wasn't Nick Park.
and that was computer animated to
Yeah.
imitate the
Mm-hmm.
Aardman aesthetic. Yeah.
Yeah, they like it was the last I think it was the last movie they co-produced together, Aardman Animations and DreamWorks was Flushed Away.
Yeah, and Arthur Christmas was computer animation, and so like I don't know, probably some of these stop motion animators uh taught themselves to do computer animation. I'm guessing, um, but yeah, I mean, it's so impressive the skill set and so alien to me, frankly, that people have the concentration to do this. Um, but I think it's just that's what art does to people. It really motivates them on a spiritual level. And I'm guessing it seems like such a learning curve because I know that if I were attempt to position these puppets, basically these maquettes with armature skeletons inside of them to allow them to be rigid. And it's a little different here because the plasticine version of it, where it is kind of like working with Play-Doh in a certain sense. Um, but like the fact that these characters look so alive, that's what I really noticed when watching the behind the scenes material that I saw. Oftentimes these characters can just kind of look dead-eyed and inanimate if they're just standing in a neutral pose. But then these animators get their hands on them and like they come up with just the most dynamic frames. And like even a single frame like has seemingly so much character and intentionality in these individual puppets that they're able to like transmute into them. Whereas I feel like if I were to try that, you know, it would take, days, weeks, months before any character that I attempted to animate would even resemble something lifelike. For me, it would just look like this dead zombie, dead-eyed zombie kind of walking around if I did this. Like the fact that they're able to make them feel so alive
Yeah,
is
they really create expressions on the characters throughout. I mean, you guys probably noticed kind of like where their eyebrows would be, like right above the brow line, how much that area sort of moves as they are talking or listening or watching things happen. It's not just blinking, because like you said, they would just look like these little zombies periodically
yeah.
blinking
I would
across the
maybe,
row.
yeah, they would
But they
look
actually
kind
seem
of
to have like facial structure, facial muscles underneath that clay that give them such a lifelike quality. And I mean, can you imagine how boring the movie would have been if they hadn't gone all out and given so much attention to that lifelike detail? I mean, I definitely wouldn't be the movie it is today.
It would just be the live action Lion King.
Oh, goodness. Or it'd be kind of like Gumby. I mean, did you guys watch Gumby?
Yes.
Which
Honestly,
is
I've thought about that a few times. I was like, they kind of like Gumby-esque, but obviously like better.
for sure. Yeah, the plasticine molding or Mr. Bill, from
Yeah.
SNL. Yeah, so it's like the principles of animation. I don't know if you how familiar you guys are with the 12 principles of animation as pioneered by the Nine Old Men from Disney, or it might have even predated the Nine Old Men to an extent, but I think it really came into being with some of those early, like Ollie Johnston, Frank Thomas. I know Milt Kahl, Walt. I used to be able to name all of them. Ward Kimball, I mean. But anyways, like Squash and Stretch, obviously, it's like the first one that they list, because that was just such a key component of making the exaggerated character aesthetic of the classic Disney and like the Fleischer Warner Brothers sort of pre-roll cartoons that would run in movies before the feature, and then of course with the moving the facial features to make them feel like these characters are thinking and they're actually breathing and acting with intention, that incorporates some of these other principles like follow through and overlapping action. That's number 5 here on the list, follow through and overlapping action, where like you've got multiple things going on in the character model as it moves from frame to frame. And I just have barely any conception as to how these animators are able to like adjust all these various things. There's got to be like at least 5 points of articulation that they're adjusting each frame in terms of like overlapping action, because it's not like you're just moving their legs slightly forward to have them take a step. There's also, their brows, their necks, their beaks, their their limbs. Like, how do you possibly keep track of all of that? It just makes no sense to me. And
Can
the
you
only
imagine? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
well,
I
no,
was just
the only thing is that it takes so long that like it probably you just get used to it after so many days of just eking out seconds at a time.
It
I
probably
was just like,
probably comes like super naturally too. Like just watching like feathers of Rocky's tail moving in one of the scenes, and I was like, man, that had to take so long.
I just think about like these husbands or wives like going throughout their whole like 9-hour workday, and then they come home and their wife's like, "So what'd you do today?" And it'd be like, "I literally like moved a chicken's foot." Like that was the whole day. It's like unbelievable how many hours they probably poured into this. And can you imagine? I mean, it's probably super rare, but they had to have made mistakes and then had to go back to that set and create that scene again. I mean, I'm not exactly sure how that would work, how editing would work, but I would like, I don't know, like
Yeah,
I would blow my
there are
brains
probably
out doing this.
yeah, doubtlessly times where entire days, if not weeks worth of animation would have to be scrapped because they would later realize, oh, we just screwed this up.
This doesn't make any sense.
We
Cut it
can't.
all.
Well, no, just the fact that like somebody bumped the camera or something, like so yeah, you would have to just completely redo an entire sequence, having to basically waste days if not more of work. I'm sure it happens all the time in this medium, but they try to account for that as much as possible, I'm sure, just to avoid those kinds of extreme uh fiascos. But it has to have happened. And I mean, uh, sometimes you run into executive meddling, or but the notion of like scenes that that what am I saying, deleted scenes, that's not really a
Yeah.
thing here, I don't think, because like they have these sequences all mapped out, storyboarded, and the animatics using more primitive animation. So there probably aren't deleted scenes for Chicken Run, but it that sometimes happens too in animation. It's rare, but it does happen.
Yeah. Well, and I've seen like, concept art or like stuff that was in there like halfway through and then they're like, actually, never mind. Like they didn't maybe fully like not for stuff like this, but like regular animation. But yeah, I would think with like, it's like we have to make all these chickens, we have to have all of these face shapes. It has to do all these like I feel like because there's so much meticulousness that has to go into all that that everything that they're doing is probably going to get used unless an executive was like, ooh, actually this isn't what you said it was going to be. But even then I'd be like, too bad, that's what you get. I'm not building any more chickens.
Like the amount of like storyboarding and like detailing that's required like prior to any type of filming is like extreme. Sometimes this goes back to kind of normal animation. Sometimes I don't like to see like the behind the scenes sketches because for example, like with Frozen, like I see some of the ideas they storyboarded for it that I love that didn't like make the cut or like didn't make it. I don't know if you guys ever saw like the sketches of her as kind of like a villain, like shape. And it's like, man, I wish I hadn't seen that because it allows my brain to like shoot.
I would have loved her to be a villain.
But they do probably like tons of extra work when it is this claymation because they can't afford to go back to the drawing board. Or I mean they maybe they can afford it, but no one wants to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, I mean they just have the story broken so thoroughly typically before they even start on the animation. But it's like art is ever evolving. So you don't want to be too rigid with your work so that there's no room for improvisation later on if you happen to come up with better ideas. So yeah, yeah.
Well, that's like what you were saying with the Frozen stuff. Like there's songs on Spotify that were songs that aren't in the movie. There's just like, oh, they were gonna be in the movie and then we changed our minds. So like they did whole songs. And I assume that they probably even lightly animated some of these, but they shouldn't use them.
I wonder, there was a lot in the behind the scenes video I saw about the voiceover. And I'm gonna wrap this up pretty soon. We're probably not gonna get into the cast too much, but maybe a little more when we talk about the sequel. But it seems like, as much as that probably wasn't nearly as time and labor intensive as the animation, the voiceover component was a vital role because of the way the vocal performances inform the animation performances, and the characters of these chickens.
Yeah.
Yeah. You watch any of that stuff? No, did you watch any of this? Yeah.
I got video that you had shared with us. Yeah. I did get to watch a good bit of it, but so when I watched it, I didn't look up any of the cast, and I was like, man, that guy sounds like Mel Gibson. But I was like, but there's no way they got Mel Gibson for this movie. And then I watched that video, and it was Mel Gibson, and I was like, I knew it. I knew it was Mel Gibson. Well, and because so he apparently was the only person in the cast who did their voiceover work in the US. Everyone else was in the UK.
Because they all have their little accents.
They're all British actors except for Mel Gibson, and he was the only one to do his lines in the US.
Huh. That's cool. That makes it even more authentic. I love that. Well, where's the animation studio based out of? Do you know? I
think it's the UK.
Okay.
Well, at least when they were doing it back then.
Is in Bristol, England. Yeah.
Okay.
I think some of the lines between like Ginger and Rocky were recorded with the two of them together. They really do try to get the cast together as much as possible, but logistically that's not all that practical to do very often. But this movie got a pretty decent financial backing from some larger studios like DreamWorks, Pathé. But then I think they make reference to recording the pair. What's her name? Jenny,
Julia Sawalha. Yeah.
Yeah, I think she recorded some lines with Mel in Vancouver, if I'm not mistaken. That kind of makes sense, like the neutral territory of Canada, where they would go and record some of the dialogue. But yes, I and that this must have almost all occurred prior to the principle of photography in 1908. So I mean, I'm guessing this is like early 1998, if not late 1997. Mel Gibson and co doing the line recordings. So I mean, obviously weird to think that these lines were just sitting in can, for 3 years before then getting introduced on the big screen. But I don't know, like Mel Gibson was certainly no less relevant in 2000 than he was in 97, 90, whenever they did the casting.
Yeah.
Julia Sawalha, I'm not sure really what yeah.
So the only people, when I looked at the cast, Mel Gibson, I knew. The only people I really noticed was Imelda Staunton. She was Bunty. She was like the big red, kind of angry chicken. So she was Umbridge from Harry Potter. So that's where I know her from. Yeah, she's Umbridge.
Wow.
So I knew her. And then Timothy Spall. He was Nick the Rat. He was Nick the Rat, but he was also Scabbers. And yeah, he was Peter Pettigrew in Harry Potter, but he's been in 100 million things, but he was in Enchanted as the bad side.
Oh, sure. I know who you're referring to now.
Yeah, like those three people are really the only ones I recognized.
Timothy Spall, he's got such a great voice. I could hear him read the phone book. Yeah.
Well, and he's like a very nice man, but I'm like, you play such a good villain. You should just always be a villain. Great villain. I mean, honestly, Imelda Staunton too. She's an awesome villain too. I think she was in what is it, Downton Abbey. She was in that, and she wasn't. I mean, she was more likable than Umbridge, but not a lot.
Do you know if typically, you guys I feel like might know this, when people go in to do their voiceover work, are they in a room together, or is someone going in? I don't know if you've ever seen behind the scenes. Are these people sort of chatting with each other, feeding off each other, or are they just like in a stall, reading their lines and like leaving? Do you know what I mean when they all come together? Like
I mean, the latter.
I think it depends.
Yeah, the latter scenario is just so much less costly and easier to logisticate due to scheduling.
I wonder that with shows like Family Guy, where they have like a million seasons, there's got to be a point where these people are like, okay, like I will come in on my own timeline, and it's just cheaper to have one stall. But I guess I wasn't sure.
Generally, I think for shows like Family Guy, they did try to get the cast together as much as possible. I think with a lot of Western shows, that is sort of an ideal scenario, but there perhaps are stipulations on the part of certain actors, especially once they reach a certain point of clout and fame, that it just gets to be very impractical for them to record with, to schedule them for a group record. So like, I don't know, Mila Kunis and
that's who I was exactly thinking of, because I was like, she has so many other projects going on, or I'm picturing Mel Gibson. I didn't realize he was the only one who filmed, kind of separately in the US, but I'm like, how did they,
they love to get them together. It's just not that easy to do. And since it's animation, you can just kind of splice things together as much as you want.
Yeah, well, and I literally just watched the girl who did the voice of Tommy Pickles from Rugrats. She was on the podcast with the girl who was Ren Stevens. I can't remember her real name in real life, but I was watching her, and she said with Rugrats, at least in the, the beginning, especially the beginning years, she was like, they always would do it together. At least like the main babies, like the one who did Phil and Lil, that was one person, Chucky, and then Tommy would always do it together. And she said they really did, like, for a long time, but then with COVID, they couldn't. And so she was like, she said now, like, unless they like make an effort to like get together, because they're all like, they've been doing Rugrats and other voices for the last 30 years. So they're bigger in the voice acting world. And so she was like, a lot of times I just do my lines at home. Like I have my own booth studio in my house. I do my lines at home and then I send it.
Yeah.
And they put it
COVID
in the
style.
shows.
COVID.
Yeah. And which, I mean, I guess
Christine
if you've been doing
Kevner.
it for 30 years, yeah, I was like, if you've been
Exactly.
doing it for 30 years, I'd be like, I want to sit at my house and do it in my sleep now.
Yeah, it'd be kind of weird if you didn't have a home studio after being in the business for that long. So yeah, so many of them do. Or wait, no, Christine Kavanaugh's Chucky, Elizabeth Daly's Tommy. I don't know if you were talking about.
Yes,
Were you
that's who I was
Tommy
talking
or
about. I
Chucky?
couldn't remember her
Okay,
real
yeah.
name. It was Tommy.
Oh,
Yeah, because the
Elizabeth
original
Daly. Okay.
person, the original voice of Chucky, she actually passed away.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah, and so they had to replace her. But I think Phil and Lil, they're the same person. And then I think Tara Strong, I think she's in it, isn't she? Or she was at
She
some
plays
point?
Dill Pickles.
Okay.
Yeah, okay,
I thought she was.
yeah, Tommy's little brother. Okay.
Okay. I knew she came in at some point, but I knew she wasn't Tommy.
Yeah, she came in 97. The show started, I'm guessing, the
91, I
earliest
think.
year I'm seeing is 91. Yeah.
The year I was born.
It's
Oh,
a
yeah.
great year.
Well, thanks guys I mean, this has been such a blast from the past. This movie was just one of those regular rotation films for me, because it has just so much texture. And I just never got, yeah, it's kind of like a Pixar, Toy Story. It is a monumental achievement, and grossed a lot of money and was very successful. But it's kind of a rare treat and easy to talk about, frankly, because
Mhm.
I've seen it so many times. But yeah, I'm guessing it's maybe a similar case for you guys and for people listening, that hopefully you're fairly intimately familiar with this film, just from it being such a classic. And so when you're a kid, sometimes it's hard to um to come up with kid appropriate, you know, material to just you know what's the word I'm looking for? Cozy up in front of the TV to watch on like a day when you're homesick from school, or on a snow day, or for the substitute teacher to put on, or whatever. So this was definitely one of those perennial uh, options for me, at least.
I think it aged well too. Like there's some movies that I've watched, like the first Toy Story, that I've watched like recently, that I was like, oh wow, that animation looks not great. But I was like, this movie looks fine. And then I watched the second one and they looked like the same movie. So I'm like, it
Yeah,
aged really well.
the writing in Toy Story, I would say, is still top notch.
Oh yeah,
But
no, it was just
yeah,
the animation was real
yeah,
wonky.
yeah. But yeah, like you got your Illumination films, and a lot of it's fart jokes and pop references and memes, and it's like this
Yes.
is gonna be irrelevant in 20 years. But yeah, these kind of classic Hollywood homages and evoking things like World War II, it's like seeing history play out in front of you. And there's so much rich texture, like modernization, themes of modernization, themes of spousal abuse. I don't know.
They said trauma, but make it palatable for children.
I think a line that really got me. There are a few moments where I laughed out loud, but I think they're mostly visual gags. But I think my favorite line reading during the film was Mr. Tweety, when he discovers the chickens working on the plane. He's like, "The tools, you thieving little buggers." That just the way he says it. I don't know. Mr. Tweety he's a goat.
Oh yeah, my favorite. Well, with honestly, it was every time he'd like see them, and he was like, "The chickens, they're doing something," and she's like, "They're not doing anything. They're being chickens." And he was like, so any other time he'd be like, "It's not real. They're not doing anything. They're just chickens. They're just chickens."
Yeah, I mean he is just so broad in his stupidity that a moment I think what appealed to me about the thieving little buggers line is like he's finally sort of like had it. He's just he's yeah, that's the last straw for him, and now he's going full rage mode. Which
Time for
for
the pie
him
machine.
is like he's such a mild-mannered, like but like repressed, um, browbeaten farmer, like old-timey farmer on the in the delve, and now he's turned into like full POW camp Sergeant Schultz or whatever from Hogan's Heroes. I know nothing.
Well, that's why I was like, he's emasculated. He's emasculated by his wife, and he's like, you know what?
Yeah,
I'm done with this.
that's right.
That I would say that and like the chickens doing taekwondo moves. It reminded me of Mulan. And I
Yes.
imagine I'm like I know it probably because Mulan came out before
Right.
that movie, and so I was like, was that? So I was like, is that a nod to Mulan? But I do apparently one of the people on their crew was a Taekwondo instructor,
Yeah.
and so they like snuck a little in there. But I was like Mulan immediately. I was like Leonardo DiCaprio, Mulan.
Yeah, I mean, that's, they'd almost get dinged, I think, by some people for, it's a cheap racial joke or something, having the little sting of some, Asian music play while they're doing the martial arts moves. But it's so, I don't know, it's not disrespectful at all, and it's just so brief. It's kind of fun.
Yeah,
Um,
everyone can do Taekwondo, even chickens.
it's not like, Mickey Rooney and, Breakfast at Tiffany's doing yellow face type of, making fun of all other cultures. It's
Or
yeah.
the Aristocats.
Oh, jeez, yeah.
I
Oh,
still one of my favorite movies,
I
but if
watched
you
that
play
recently
it
and I
back,
caught
and
it
I'm
with
like,
the chopsticks and the little, yep,
my mom was
yeah.
like, "What does it say?" And I recited it to her. She was like, "Oh," and I was like, "Y'all didn't catch that? You didn't catch that?
You're like, honey, it's the 90s. We're just gonna do what we want.
You watched this cat movie, baby."
Yeah, frankly, like it is possible for something to be too British. Like I love the fact that British humor is very intelligent and wry, and it,
Very
relies
dry.
on wit. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Believe
like
me, I watched The
sometimes,
Office the first time and I did not understand it. I was like, I don't understand. And he was like, "Oh yeah,
yeah,
you don't get the British stuff." And I was like,
sometimes it gets
"No."
just too esoteric and just too dry. And I'm glad like you have things here that make it feel more familiar, like the Rocky character. He's the doofus. He speaks basically exclusively in cliches, especially while he's like coaching the chickens. Hard work, perseverance, and hard work. You said hard work twice.
And she was
Yes,
like,
Oh,
"What?"
you need double the hard work as perseverance. And they're like, some of the chickens are like nodding, like,
he's like any middle school coach that you've ever had. Like, so there's just a lot of injection of, more American style humor in a lot of cases, and yeah, just like having a little bit of the soundtrack kind of, be have like a little Asian spice in it or whatever references to. I mean, there's so many references to other film scores here, that is just too many to really name, but it is such a rich text, you know, and even like, the fact that it is so reminiscent of the score for The Great Escape, the Elmer Bernstein, is selling it short of the way it also is kind of doing uh, um, montage basically of uh, review throughout cinema history. Like there's references to Jaws and references to um, oh shoot, what was it's like Italian or French films and uh there were a couple that were kind of impressive, but um, anyways, I'll just I'll let people discover it for themselves.
We got to watch it soon, though. Apparently, the first one's soon from Netflix.
Oh yeah,
Get on there.
hopefully I'll get this episode up before it leaves Netflix. But
Worst
I guess
case, they can watch the new one.
the sequel, yeah.
I'm excited to watch the sequel now. I feel like I've refreshed my love for it. I don't want you guys to give any spoilers, but would you give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down?
Yeah, it's cute. I liked it.
I can't say.
It's cute.
Philip's like, I'm gonna keep that as a surprise.
Yeah,
for
I
next
haven't
time we
finished
record.
it.
Yeah, I thought it was amusing, especially because now there's like a kid, and I'm like, yeah, kids.
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 I'm sick of kids, and I've only had one for 6 weeks.
That's what I told you. Don't get tricked. Don't get tricked. Don't make your decision about it anymore yet. Give it time.
All right. Well, I know I guess I host the show and I tend to hog the conversation a little bit. I mean, it is
It's
my
your
birthday today.
You're allowed to
Yeah,
do
it's your
whatever
birthday.
you want. It's your birthday podcast.
So apologies. If any of y'all have a bit more to add as we wrap up final thoughts, I'll shut up for a few minutes and feel free to go off. But yeah, what all have we missed? Is there anything? And yeah, final thoughts from you two, Bridget and Jody.
Well, I had a joke that I wanted to throw in, like, why did the piece of bubble? No, sorry. How did the piece of bubble gum cross? Oh, no. Why did the piece of bubble gum cross the road? Why did the piece of bubble gum cross the road?
Because it was stuck to a chicken.
Yeah, the chicken's foot. All right, you know what? I don't have anything else to say, but that was my joke I wanted to throw in. So if Bridget has a better joke to wrap up with.
I don't have any chicken related jokes. But I did want to talk about, so you said that their teeth were weird. So apparently, so you know how they kept like Rocky and Ginger were like, oh, we're going to kiss. And then they wouldn't kiss. So apparently that was intentional because the directors were like, we think it'd look like you never see them like kiss because they're like, oh, it would be really weird to see chickens kiss because they have beaks, but give them teeth, go off, I guess. So when they actually so they were like, oh, we'll just do it as like a running gag. So at the end, when they do finally kiss, they like intentionally made sure you couldn't see their beaks because they thought people would think it was weird. So I was like, that was related to your teeth comment to me. So it was a fun fact.
That is, yeah. I mean, they do successfully kiss, but you don't really see the geometry of it. So
they just boop, boop, I guess. I don't know.
That's got to be a kink for someone. Just the sheer difficulty of it has to make it kind of almost into an increasingly what would you call that? A rarefied fetish.
Yeah, like a curiosity.
How do you even do it?
Well, I mean, the way that I would imagine is they just kind of like peck each other's beaks. I don't know. That's why they call it a peck.
I think it's more of like a tessellation, like the two intersect, like the two cones sort of lined up next to each other. There's a lot of side action going on.
Yeah, someone has to turn head. It gets very complicated. We can't have that on screen.
You can sort of rotate to get a little more like spice in that, just like, yeah, you want to explore all the ways in which two beaks can kind of fit together.
Or to become one.
I mean, and then chicken, they may not have teeth, but they do have tongues. So, you got to work in the tongue in the...
You got to get past the human teeth, though. That's what I was like. They thought that the kissing would be weird because they have beaks, but not the teeth.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
okay.
So maybe they didn't really go over everything when they storyboarded. What if they finished the whole movie and they're like, you know what? I'm not loving the teeth.
Too late now.
We're gonna have to go back.
Too late now.
Though, that heron in The Boy and the Heron, I bet he's in the bear. He's like a dude who's disguised as a heron. So he's got like real teeth inside that beak but
No, Jody hasn't bootlegged it yet. Don't tell her.
oh,
I wanted to cover my ears because that is when I'm super excited. I'm not even gonna like listen to anyone talk about it yet because I someday somehow it's gonna get on a streaming device, but not yet.
yeah.
I'm
But
gonna find it.
I'm just saying that character definitely has a thing for birds.
Yeah, he definitely had some. That's for sure. And then another fun fact: the ginger was supposed to have a brother named Nobby, but they thought that would make the movie cute, so they took him out. Yeah, he
Too
was like,
cute.
yeah, they were like, they didn't want it to be too cutesy, I guess. They were like, there's some themes to this movie, but it's fun. But they didn't want it to be like too cutesy, so they took the brother idea out.
Aw.
There was like some other ones that like some other chickens, but they weren't as important.
Yeah, I
They
have
weren't
to.
related.
They didn't make the cut.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they were like, no, we don't
I
need
would
them.
think there would be hatchlings at certain points throughout,
At the very end,
the
they have
running
the
of the.
little
No, I mean
baby.
like in the actual running of the farm.
You would
Don't
think.
wouldn't there
But
be?
if you only have hens, they don't fertilize their egg, and they
When
only
you
have
only have an old rooster.
How do
yeah.
they get more chickens though? I would think that they would hatch.
Well,
Probably not that often, but that would
yeah.
just add a lot more business to try to have these chicks, that they would occasionally crop up.
Well,
Yeah.
and I think like maybe the reason that they did have like an older rooster was because I mean their whole like business model at the time was selling eggs, so they didn't want them fertilized.
No, but they'd still have to
I guess it makes
replenish
sense.
the ones they ate. Um,
I think you could probably just buy if because if you're not
yeah,
eating them all the time, you're just eating them when they stop producing. You could probably just buy another one.
that might make more sense. Yeah.
Cost
Um,
efficient.
yeah. What was I going to say? Oh, that was one of the references. It's raining hen. Um, Fetcher. So and there's one good one that where Mac. Um, let me see if I can find it here. The verbatim. Uh, a Klingon captain, and the engines can't take it.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
uh, Fowler says Great Scott, which I mean, Doc Brown from Back to the Future kind of has a monopoly on Great Scott nowadays, post Back to the Future, but that was a common expression just in general.
Well, yeah, because I think that there was another show where they said Great Scott a lot too.
I could see
And I
it.
can't remember what it was. There was a show though that was older because my mom watched it, but he said Great Scott.
Yeah.
And it was
Uh,
like, and which is probably where they got it from for Back to the Future, was because it was like popular in an earlier time.
it's just yeah, it's a great expression. And yeah, like there's so many kind of like mild exclamations, interjection, in this and Britishisms that sort of fill the
Hmm.
space of, if this movie were like PG-13 or whatever, they probably would have used actual curse words, but instead they use things like bloomin' heck, bloomin' heck. What's another one? But anyways, like there's the speaking of references, I don't think I ever caught that the first thing you hear from Rocky is him shouting freedom, which obviously probably most famous moment in Mel Gibson's career is him shouting freedom at the end of Braveheart. So I
When did Braveheart come out?
prior to this, 96, I
Okay.
think. Yeah.
Okay. I could not remember any of his like stuff before this. I was just like, he was in movies.
Yeah, I was a little young to pick up on that probably as a kid, but it was like, oh my gosh, he's literally quoting his most famous line, right
Well,
away here.
I feel like they do that a lot. It's like it's for the adults.
Yeah,
They add a lot of little things in for the adults because there's some things that I watch back now that I'm like, oh, I didn't catch that
yeah.
until I got older, and I'm like, oh, that makes sense now. My kids don't
Yeah.
get it, and they're like, what?
That has been one of my favorite parts about doing the Thoughtcast is like having the opportunity to sort of like revisit these things. And Chicken Run was no exception of like extra joy I got to as an adult watching it.
All right. Well, I'll look forward to completing the Dawn of the Nugget in time for our next episode. And I'm hoping to be coming out with more frequent episodes as I get in the mood to
As the
podcast.
winter thaws and you warm
Yeah.
up to it.
Get out of the sick
Yeah.
time of year.
Yeah, I've been kind of going through stuff and coming out on the other side of it, just makes me realize the kind of necessity of putting a little bit of effort into appreciating the bounty of life's blessings. And if I don't take time to like take stock of these things, then I can really sort of let myself go in ways in which I just deep down fundamentally don't want to to ever happen again. So
You're
we'll
32 now, you're older, you're
yeah,
wiser, you're really ready to embrace.
yeah. And I worry just so much about like how I come off in these episodes, and I'm like, I want it to be perfect, and it's like, who cares?
If it's chicken run,
No.
I just want to talk to you and Bridget.
Yeah.
And like, if you're ever like not feeling like you're embracing life, like I'm gonna send you my baby for a couple weeks, and you'll keep it up, and then when you send the baby back to me, you'll be like, oh, I can breathe again, I can sleep again, like I can live. So if you ever need a little help, I will FedEx him about eight
No, I
pounds. So
mean,
it shouldn't be too much.
yeah, it's
Get
really
there super
like,
fast.
yeah, I'm just such a head case that the notion of even, being in close proximity to a child like that is just, it's so far out of the realm of my experience. But the
Same.
the hope is,
Same.
Yeah,
Same.
well,
I've had sick kids the last 2 weekends, and I'm just
yeah.
like, I'm
Yeah,
here.
I
I'm
need
living.
to, yeah. I mean, obviously, I've utterly failed in my efforts to live up to, my mantra of let it go, and like as someone who had an existential crisis when hearing Idina Menzel sing in a Disney movie for the first time, like I guess I'm sort of par for the course in terms of my kind of mental headspace. But I would have hoped that more progress would have been made in the 10 intervening years since Frozen came out, and
We
instead
don't count the
maybe
years. We don't count the years, Philip.
yeah, yeah, in certain ways I've certainly regressed. But
Honestly, I think
life's a
everyone
journey.
is. I think everyone our age is just going
Oh, the
a different
world's
way.
regret. That's the thing. It's
Yeah.
like I feel crappy about myself, but then I look at like the world and I'm like, how is anyone making it? We're
I look
all
at
in the shit
anyone in
box.
their 30s right now and I'm like, you know what? I'm right on par.
Yeah,
Yeah. We're
exactly.
all like chaotic neutral out here, trying our best.
So yeah,
I will
I'm
throw this
not.
out to you all because, like, now that, again, not to make it about the baby, but I guess my life is about the baby. Like,
This-
babies are not supposed to be like screaming and crying all alone when they're newborn in their crib. And I know for a fact that all of us as babies are set us in the crib, close the door, and let us cry and scream. So I think like now it's coming back to haunt us in our 30s, like that treatment as 90s babies. We were never
Oh.
taught how to self-soothe, and I think that's coming back to haunt us a little bit here.
I mean, crying has always been one of the more therapeutic experiences that I've endured, but it's just, you know, I
Not as
haven't been able to do as much lately just because I haven't been in the mood. It's too intense. It's too
yeah, man.
I
You
don't
just gotta you
know.
just gotta make yourself do it. You're like, I just gotta get it out.
I guess I am a spicy food fanatic, and
Yeah, get yourself some peppers, Philip, for your birthday.
yeah. I mean, I've realized, in some of my more recent health scares that's not a sustainable recourse, but it's not something that I'm gonna quite give up cold turkey as of yet. Like, if I ever lose some of my tolerance to spicy food, um, you know, I'm not gonna just drop it completely because
Oh no,
yeah,
we're here for a good time, not a long time. That
exactly.
is, I say
Life's too
that so
short.
often, and I'm like, man, if I had a therapist, they'd be like, please stop. No,
Well, and
no.
the blaze, like the new reformulated blazing sauce at B-Dubs is A plus. Like it's so like I mean, obviously the spiciness is near fatal, but the flavor is actually like I find it impeccable. So speaking
I
of
have to try
chicken.
that. I'm a spicy gal. I actually made spicy Korean beef tonight for dinner,
Ooh,
and it
yeah.
was really
Okay, then
good.
Bridget, I guess I will come over next time you make the spicy beef.
It's good. I actually got
Sounds
Scarlett
so
helped me
good.
make it.
That's
She
so
helped me make it, and she like tried it because I can't get her to try anything other than apparently chicken. But it was beef, and she was like, I'm afraid to try it, and she was like, it was good. It was a little spicy, and I was like, okay, next time I won't put as many red pepper flakes. Because usually the kids don't eat it, so it was like it's just spicy.
more for me. Spicy.
Yes, I'm like I don't care. I put mine in my bowl with my rice, and then I put sriracha on top of it. So I'm a spice gal.
Yeah.
I'm a
I've
spice
kind of
girl.
I've discovered Thai chilies recently, like dehydrated Thai chilies from the Asian grocery store that just opened up in my town recently. So like those have been kind of a fun um little uh little detour.
As long
So
as you stay in moderation,
yeah,
maybe you'll be
exactly.
good to go.
Yeah, just have one every now and then for
Yeah,
your sanity, probably.
exactly.
Don't go too hard.
No. Well, thank you, you guys. Formula One season's coming up too, so I'm in good spirits for the as a result of that. I recently just rewatched the entirety of Drive to Survive on Netflix. There's a new season coming out. I guess the new live action Avatar: Last Airbender is coming on Netflix too. So
February
that
23rd.
yeah. Oh, same day as Drive to Survive. Oh, geez.
You have
I
so much
mean.
to watch that day.
Yeah, Drive to Survive is nice because you can kind of shut your brain off. It is a bit pulpy, should I say, as like a kind of reality TV documentary series. So like
Wait, is
it's
this
one of
on
those things
Netflix? I think I
on
just watched
Netflix.
it
Yeah,
accidentally. Was
Drive
it
to
like
Survive.
5 episodes?
Each season has 10 episodes. There are 5 seasons.
Well, I watched
Not that
something
one.
about some guy named Bubba who threw a watermelon on the ground. Oh
Okay,
wait, that's
there's
NASCAR.
a new
My bad.
NASCAR series
That's
too.
what I thought. That's
It's
what I
not the same.
No, yeah, in my depression lately, like I've been like speaking of like Minecraft videos, I've been watching some Let's Plays of some
Oh, I like
classic
Let's
video
Play.
games that
Yeah.
I grew up playing, and I even played through one of my favorite PS2 games, and yeah, it's been a fun kind of process, learning
Well, if you
process.
like race cars so much, maybe like your little goal, if you like achieve your dreams, is that once you achieve your dreams, you can go to like Vegas and drive a race car on a racetrack.
Exactly, I'll be
They have a thing in Atlanta,
Oh,
Andretti, where you can drive like cars around tracks.
mhm.
It's
fast.
inside. Yeah, fast.
Oh, but fast, yeah.
Yeah, fast.
I'll I'll be
So
uh a paddock one of the regulars on a regular uh pest a paddock pest paddock rat, there we go. All right, anything else to before I sign off here? Social media, you guys,
Nope.
Jody, starting with you.
Well,
Okay,
no, I honestly have nothing. Just
okay.
my joke, which was a
uh
so
why I
Bridget.
mean yeah, Bridget, go ahead.
Oh, Moana. Hold on. Moana 2 coming out. Didn't know there'd be a Moana 2. Yeah, I was like, what happened to the live action? Which honestly, I'm not looking forward to.
Mm.
But yeah, they're like Moana 2. I was like, okay, thank you, I guess.
Kind of
For
out of
that.
nowhere, but that's fine.
Yeah, I was like, I mean, I'll take that over another live action movie, so that's
Mhm.
fine. But yeah, you can find me on Instagram. It's Bridget5246. That's Bridge with a T, 5246.
Yeah, yeah. This turned out to be a bit of a long episode, but oh well, it was fun. And yeah, the whole Moana thing is kind of funny because it was originally supposed to be a series, a Disney Plus series that they've now converted into this theatrical film, which nobody had known about until the this latest announcement in the trailer. It was just a total surprise. Even though like there had been a Moana sequel, a theatrical sequel announced, that wasn't scheduled for 2024. Uh, and the only reason we're getting a Moana sequel now theatrically in 2024 is because what was once a Disney Plus um, series production is now full on Disney animation. I suppose it'll be what the 63rd or 64th Disney animated feature officially. I'm guessing the scale and scope they are pretty high quality, those Disney Plus series, and they'll probably even spruce it up a little more for the theaters even than they have currently. But yeah, kind of cool to see that. But who knows? Maybe a bit cynical as well. What was the next Disney animated film supposed to be? Do you know?
Was it Frozen? I'm not
No,
sure.
No.
he
I'm
just
not sure what's supposed to be
Wish.
next. Yeah.
Upcoming Disney animated features. Because
I feel like
Inside
that was
Out
a
too.
big. Oh, yeah, that one is getting
the
a lot of.
Pixar. That's a Pixar.
Mm.
I thought there was maybe some obscure sounding
There
um
is, it's about a kid, like a boy. We've talked about it.
yeah.
I don't know what it was
Well,
called though. Because yeah, there's the Pixar movie Inside Out 2, which
yeah.
honestly, if they bring everyone back, I'm here for that. The Mufasa movie, which in live action, I don't care. Elio, it's about the
Yes.
boy. Yes.
How do you spell
That
that?
Elio. But that's slated for 2025, June of
Okay.
2025.
But that is going to be a feature. So yeah,
Mhm.
there's a official teaser so far or for Elio. I actually have not seen any. I've kind of fallen away. I'm probably not even going to renew my D23 subscription tragically this year. It's just I don't know. I need to be a bit more judicious about my spending and stuff, and it's just I don't think I've ever really seen the at least in the past few years, being in Minnesota and such, I have no plans to go to D23, uh, the next convention. So it's like, I don't know. I need to learn to let things go, clearly. So,
Or just take a
uh,
little breather from it and visit
exactly.
later. It's
Yeah, it's not
totally
the end of the
allowed.
world. Yeah. And like yeah, those are some cool magazines, those publications that they send every quarter, but gosh, I I've barely cracked them and I don't know. I'm trying to read more. That's a thing, another big therapy thing for me, but um yeah, and that's been working um somewhat just trying to because it's very relaxing for me if it's the right book. If it's not the right book, then it's like
Then
pulling
it's thrown
teeth.
to the side.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
I don't know. I'm
Well,
in all these mom groups, so I only hear about smutty books these days. I don't get to read anything because my kids hate me. Oh, actually, I do get to read manga because they're much quicker to read, but
Yeah, I was
that's
gonna say
about
you
it.
need quick books, like you need the quick ones.
Yeah, I can read manga, but those a lot of it is pictures, so you can get through it a lot quicker. But yeah, it's just smutty Colleen Hoover books. That's all I hear about, and I'm like, no,
yeah,
No.
read
2024.
something fun.
Yeah, it's a year to let things go, and if there turns out that if it turns out to be something that I really need in my life, then I can bring it, I can let it back in. All
It'll
right.
still be there.
It'll still be there. All right. Well, thank you so much, Bridget and Jody. Find Thodcast, thodcast.com, at Thodcast on Twitter, X, and Instagram, and all that good stuff. At Philip Elke on the socials is where you can find me, Philip Elke, and on the Thodcast, uh, conversations about animation, and it's been a fun chat about a true classic. And we'll be back with some more Thodcast, and I promise. I've had so much fun today. So thank you so much, guys, that I won't allow nearly as much time to pass before we do it again, provided, you all have the time to step away from motherhood, because
Yeah, we have to give Jody some adult interaction.
I love it. I'm like thinking right now, like I'm gonna go jump off the roof and die happy. I should not make jokes like that, but this was definitely fun, and I'm excited to hop back and record again in the near future.
We've been on for 2 hours here, but I promise next time, it'll be a bit shorter, and
no, it won't.
There's a lot to say.
Don't lie. Stop lying.
Well, if you don't mind, I mean, it's okay, but like, yeah, I don't want to inconvenience. So maybe I'll make some friends online who run podcast businesses and try to like submit something, a reel to help get some income, because like, I don't know, it's the whole I have a hard time seeing any potential I want to treat you guys well, that's the thing. So maybe we'll see something in terms of like, sponsorships, or who knows what'll happen, because that'll just be a bright spot in everyone's day, hearing another ad on a podcast, if it ever comes to that. So look forward to that if it ever happens. No. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening to the Thoughtcast, and you all enjoy the rest of your winter like a piece of gum stuck to a chicken's foot as you endure
as it crosses the road.
the crossing of the road into hopefully warmer, greener. The grass is always greener on the other side,
Yeah.
And have a magical day. Have a wonderful week. Warm hug.